Good evening, Hawkeye Nation. Everybody here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Good day to be a Hawkeye as postseason play begins with a 69-58 victory for the Iowa women in the Big Ten tournament up in Minneapolis. This is Iowa Postgame with yours truly, Corey Brada here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. No women's basketball postgame throughout the regular season, but as we did last year, bringing you postseason coverage. So I plan on being here each and every postseason game, hopefully for a long stretch, because that would indicate that Iowa is taking care of business and advancing further than they did last year. Of course, this team has had a lot of success at the Big Ten tournament, albeit in a different location. But they've struggled, at least I think short-term memory would indicate to us that they've struggled in the tournament. And of course, we're referring to their loss at home to Creighton in the second round of the NCAA's last year. But a good start today. Kind of a slow second quarter allowed Purdue to get back in this thing. And at one point, Purdue retook the lead. It was kind of a weird time period. I don't know if it was just kind of getting a bit complacent. You get up early, and Iowa jumped out to, a 13-4 lead early. Iowa was shooting the lights out. Gabby Marshall hit a couple of early threes, which is always a good sign because she's kind of hit or miss, one of the streakier three-point shooters in my recent memory for this team. And she made a couple early threes. But, Purdue's interesting how they play Iowa. And I think matchup-wise, this is a team that, they play Iowa the right way, denying Monica Sonano the ball, forcing people like Marshall, like Martin to make threes. And usually Kate Martin is at least above average from three. She's not a high volume three-point shooter, but she's usually efficient. Gabby Marshall is hit or miss. Iowa, again, benefited from her making a couple early ones today. But boy, Purdue just made things hard on Monica Sonano. For the game, Sonano had 14 points, 6 of 7 from the field. But again, volume-wise, you want Monica Sonano taking more than 7 points. And I thought Lisa Bluter made an excellent point at halftime. When we've gotten the ball down low, we've scored. Whether it be through Sonano or maybe through Marshall. We're talking about a kick out, right? Drive and kick, or certainly a toss into the post and then a kick out for three. And Iowa benefited early, but I thought Purdue got back in this game by denying Monica Sonano the ball, and they play a physical brand of basketball. You look at Purdue up and down, and there's nobody on their roster that really blows you away. In fact, this is an incredible stat. For the game, Purdue had one player in double figures, one, and it was somebody off the bench. That is incredible. Their leading starter scored 8 points in this game, and she was 3 of 8 from the field. You want to know how Purdue was in this game? It was what they did on the defensive end. They forced turnovers for the game. Unofficial box score here, Iowa with 15 turnovers. That number's too high. You're not going to be able to turn the ball over 15 times in tournament play. So they get away with it today. Purdue just shot 33% from the field, 29% from three. Got to the free throw line just 8 times. These two teams were tied in the rebounding category. Iowa struggled, but not nearly to the extent that Purdue did from three, 32%. So respectable, 7 of 22 from three and 46% from the field, from three, from the field. 46% from the field and 12 of 13 from the free throw line. So you're looking at this thinking, how in the world was Purdue in this game? One point that I think it was Megan McCowan made during the game that I thought was excellent. Purdue ran the shot clock down on a lot of these possessions and controlled much of the game as far as pace of play, controlled pace of play. And that is another thing to follow as we continue into postseason play is, can Iowa continue to dictate pace against teams outside of their own conference? Certainly today, they're playing a team that they're accustomed to seeing. They were able to get away with it, but Purdue did give a bit of a blueprint, I thought, in that second quarter especially, to how you compete against Iowa and potentially how you beat Iowa. And remember, that loss to Creighton, I don't have the score in front of me, that loss to Creighton last year was not a high-scoring game. And I'd have to go back and watch that again, but I did feel kind of the same way I felt in the second quarter today. Defensively, Iowa was not great in that second quarter, but they weren't terrible. And it's a similar story to what I think we're going to see with the men. As much as we dog on both of these programs' defenses, what's probably going to lose them games is on the other end. It's going to be when you have an off shooting night. I think back to the Richmond game last year for the men. Iowa shoots the ball somewhat poorly, and the defense is okay, but not good enough to overcome a very unorthodox shooting performance, and it killed them. Same thing with the Iowa women against Creighton. And today, Iowa shot the ball semi-poorly, at least poorly to their standards, and yet got away with a victory. Again, final stat line for Iowa's star players, Caitlin Clark with 22 points, 8 boards, and 4 assists. And she took a while to get going. She was quiet. Monica Sonato had 14 points, 4 boards on 6 of 7 shooting. Gabby Marshall had 11 points. Most of those points came in the first quarter. 11 points for Gabby, 4 of 7 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3. 3 rebounds, 2 assists for Gabby Marshall. Kate Martin chipped in 7 points and 7 boards. And they needed those 7 boards from their guard, Kate Martin, because, again, they were just even on the glass against the Boilers. Hannah Stolke added 4 points. Sydney Falter added 2. And let's see, who did I miss? McKenna Warnock in the starting lineup missed all 3 of her 3-point attempts, but was 3 of 7 from the field for 9 points and 4 rebounds. So not a great performance, not real clean. Didn't shoot the ball real well. I've got some theories as to why that might be. Sometimes you just don't shoot the ball as well. Would not be shocked to see Iowa come out tomorrow and shoot the ball really well. Of course, we're going to find out who Iowa plays tomorrow. We'll find that out here in a couple of hours because that final game of the day is about to get underway between Maryland and Illinois. All right, here's how it's going to go, folks. Again, no special guest this evening. No Coach Gary Close. I have not invited Coach Close on the women's basketball show. He's obviously welcome anytime he would like. But we're here to talk to you. I'm going to give you my take on each one of these performances as we continue throughout the women's basketball postseason, hopefully tournaments. Right, we're gonna hopefully see a number of wins and post game shows. So the number to call is the same number you call for the Iowa football post game shows, and of course Iowa post game with Coach Gary Close. The number is 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. If you want to call and chat Iowa women's hoops and Iowa's victory over the Purdue Boilermakers. You can also find the link to call in by means of StreamYard in the description below. And how about this? I'll throw it up in the chat right now. If you don't have it in your description, I added it right as soon as we went on the air. So I'll throw the StreamYard link to call in by means of StreamYard up in the chat there. All right, before we get to our first caller of the day, want to take a special moment to thank Iowa Smokehouse. They've been sponsoring our Iowa men's basketball coverage throughout the month of February, and they're with us in the month of March as well. We appreciate Iowa Smokehouse, the guys down in Albia, with some great tasting snacks, whether you're talking about beef jerky or meat sticks. They've got these steak bites that are just awesome, and even some salsas and ketchups and barbecue sauces as well. Just great stuff from Iowa Smokehouse. Visit iowasmokehouse.com. That's www.iowasmokehouse.com. Use that code Hawkeye, which is still valid. 15% off your order when you use the code Hawkeye. And yes, they are available in some of your major grocers, but you will not get this deal by going into your local store. Visit iowasmokehouse.com. Use the code Hawkeye for 15% off. And if you get a $50 or more order, you'll get free shipping. Iowa Smokehouse down in Albia. All right, folks, let's get to our first caller of the day. James is on the line. James, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
Good. How are you, sir?
Good. First off, what do you think? I know it didn't hurt us, but we always talk about Fran getting technicals. So what do you think about Caitlin Clark's technical at that moment? At that moment, it was big, but it didn't hurt us in the long run. But at that moment, it could have been huge.
Well, James, you may not remember this, and I'd have to think back to what game it was. It might have been after the Kansas State loss. And as you know, I'm not doing post-game coverage after every Iowa women's basketball game. But after the Kansas State loss back in, December, I remember saying on this very show, at some point, Caitlin Clark's, I'm not going to call them antics because I understand she plays with an edge, and I have no problem with that. Certainly her attitude and her confidence is an asset to this team more often than not. But there are times where I think she maybe allows her emotions to get a little out of check. And I'm not saying she's out of line when she's celebrating a shot or whatever the case may be. But you saw it, James, and she gets when teams play her a little bit more physical than your average team, and she doesn't get the calls that she's accustomed to getting. She sometimes, I think she gets a little bit rattled. And that's why I said earlier, I think that's part of this. I think Purdue did give other teams some tape to look at and say, look, we can get under her skin. And I think she's proven, as great of a player as she is, and she is fantastic, one of the best to ever do it, period, in the women's game, one of the best to ever do it. I do feel like maybe her emotions could be her strength and her weakness at times, if that makes sense. So, yeah, that technical was not that was a clear T. I mean,
I agree.
At first I didn't know if the official called it or saw it, but it was a clear technical. You cannot make that type of emotion toward the officials. So, yeah, I would agree with that. Badly timed, but they got away with it tonight. But certainly something that could come back to bite them in a bigger game.
One thing I noticed too is like after the third quarter, like halfway through the third, we got it going. You know, we started making a little bit more shots, and that kind of spread it out. I don't know what they changed. Purdue, I wasn't really watching that. You respect, but like I feel like in the second quarter, we just were getting too high, like we were getting too like complacent with ourselves. We were just kept going down, like going through the motions. Like, you know, we weren't really doing anything different. We were just going through the same motion every time, and they started doubling, and then that just got to their head. But one thing I noticed too, why did Molly Davis not play a lot? Doesn't she usually play a decent amount?
Well, I thought she was out there quite a bit. Well, how many minutes did she get? I don't have.
I didn't see her out there most of the game. I don't know. Maybe I was just missing. I seen her in the fourth quarter for sure, but I didn't think I seen her in during that run because I said it might not have been bad to give her some of the point guard. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes give her the ball as a point, have Caitlin play off the off guard.
I was just going to say, James, real quick, that's my one criticism on Molly Davis. When she came in, I anticipated her coming in and maybe being a bit more assertive offensively. And I know that Iowa's got plenty of options on that end, but she is not quite as aggressive from a scoring perspective as I anticipated. So I would agree with that. I think maybe she can be, especially when you get to tournament play, because she's got a different type of game. She's obviously undersized. We understand that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think her one big weakness on that end is just her 3-point shot. She's just, I don't know what she's shooting for the year, but I think if you're Lisa Bluter, she looks at someone like Gabby Marshall and certainly Caitlin Clark and their ability to hit threes, and they're going to get more minutes simply because of their ability to hit the long ball.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I mean, like when they're doubling Caitlin, I was thinking in my head, maybe throw her out there, have her run the point a little bit, get the ball out of Caitlin's hand. And then when you swing it to Caitlin, she might get easier shots because they can't double her as quick. You got somebody you have to worry about. That's the guard that can drive and kick to somebody or drive and kick to Sonano.
I do think, though, that part of that, James, is when she's in there, she's got to be aggressive.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not what the coaches are preaching to her. But when I see Molly Davis in there and I know her ability to score and she's really good in the mid-range, attack. And sometimes I feel like maybe she's a bit hesitant to do so. But to me, she came here because of what she brings you on that end. And I agree with you.
I feel like that would have helped Caitlin a bit too. She got too downhill sometimes. We got her shot blocked a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like pull a couple mid-range shots or try to shoot a floater instead of getting all the way downhill. Because then once she got downhill, they just like suffocated it, so she couldn't really get a shot off. But
you're right, Molly Davis with 10 minutes today. So I don't know what she's averaging for the year, but Lisa Bluter has really shortened this lineup. I mean, Sydney Falter gets 9 minutes. It's basically 6 women.
Yeah,
and really 5. I mean, the starters are logging such heavy minutes. Hannah Stolke got 16 minutes tonight. This is the first game of tournament play, but when you get to tournament play, and this is going to be the same thing with the men, I doubt we start seeing Desante Bowen, Ogundele Mulvey. Those guys aren't going to start playing now that we get to Big Ten play.
Yeah.
I think it's more likely that we see less minutes for people like Josh Dix. Teams just shorten their lineups, especially when you get to tournament play and this deep in the season. So I think I know this is changing the subject, James, and I know we got other callers here waiting to chat, but my biggest thing that I'm disappointed in as this season has gone on is I'm a little bit disappointed in the lack of minutes, lack of time for Addison O'Grady. And I'm not ripping the coaching staff. I just think it's an indication that perhaps she's not as fully developed as we thought she would be at this point.
And you're going to need her next year, too, with the fact that you lose Sonano and Stolke will probably be your 5. But obviously, you're going to need somebody to back up Stolke in a minute. But one more thing I had before I'll go is I feel like I agree with you on the Davis part, but at least you know what Elle Falter is going to get you. She's a solid defender, at least. You know, she's not going to put the ball in the hole much, but she's a good defender, at least Sydney is. So, like, for that, you at least know what she's going to get you. You can play her those 9-10 minutes, and you know she'll play the defense you need. And at least you can put her out there, and she's a liability on offense, but she's not a liability on defense. I think Molly's kind of not really not really good at offense, and she's not really a great defender. So it's kind of hard. It's like that midpoint. It's like, what do you do with her?
Well,
I
that's why I said I think she's a better offensive player
Yeah.
than she showcased here, but I think part of that are the parts that are working around her.
Yeah, but all right, we'll see what happens, and we'll see who we get tomorrow, and hopefully we can get another one. But it's only the goal, and obviously go boys on Sunday. That's the big one.
Yep, just survive in advance, James. Appreciate you calling in, sir.
Yep. Thank you. Enjoy.
Okay, thank you, James. Appreciate the call, sir. All right, let's go to our next caller, Drill MVP. Thank you for calling the Iowa Smokehouse call-in line.
Hey, Corey, how you doing this evening?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. I would talk to you a lot more on the men's show if you weren't so popular, Corey.
I thought you were going to say you'd talk to me a lot more about Iowa women's basketball if Kentucky were better, because they are.
Oh, no.
Hey,
hey, Kentucky, the slipper is still fitting, Corey. Okay? The slipper still fits.
What slipper is that? The slipper for...
Hey, they've won 2 games. That's as many as they won in the regular season. In the postseason.
They've won 2 tournament games?
Huh?
They've won they're 2-0 in the tournament?
Yeah, they beat Florida and Alabama.
Okay, Florida and Alabama aren't very good, right?
Did you? Kentucky won 2 out of 16 games in the SEC regular season.
I know, okay? They're bad.
I'll take my 2 wins when I can get them. Okay,
I don't blame you.
Hey, they've won their last 6 SEC games in tournament play. That's pretty impressive. And Corey, I'm going to ask you about the bigger picture because the Big Ten isn't the only basketball tournament going on right now. Charlie Cream, I'm not sure if you've seen his bracketology today. He has Maryland as the final 1 seed. Do you think if Iowa were to play Maryland and they were to win, they could get a 1 seed? And if you say no to that, do you think if they beat Maryland and Indiana, could they get to a 1 seed?
Boy, I as bad as I am with bracketology for the men, and that's why I don't do bracketology shows. I mean, I love talking about seeds and whatnot. I couldn't tell you. I think, from the eye test perspective, I think Maryland is probably the best team in the Big Ten, and I know people are going to laugh at that and say it's Indiana. Indiana doesn't scare me. Maryland scares me because of how they play and how athletic they are and how long they are. Indiana's got really skilled players. I think they're really well coached. Obviously, they're really well coached. They've lost, 2 games all season. But I think Maryland might be the best team in the Big Ten when they're playing Maryland basketball. I mean, they've been consistent. As far as the national perspective, I don't know that there is a 1 seed in this conference. Indiana, I know where is India? It's Indiana currently projected as a 1.
They're the second best 1.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me, but I don't know. I will be surprised if Indiana makes a 4. I'll say that. And I know it's hard to make a Final 4 in general, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Indiana won a lot more this year than I anticipated they'd win. But it will be interesting once we get to tournament play how they deal with different teams from outside the conference, different officials. Of course, you always wonder that with Big Ten, both the men and the women. So I don't think Iowa or Maryland are probably deserving of a 1 seed based on their bodies of work. I think both of those teams are probably 2 seeds. I guess Indiana deserves a 1 based on their resume, but I will be surprised if the Big Ten gets anybody in the Final 4. That's what I'll say. I'm not going to be shocked. I hope they do. But I could see several teams making the Elite 8 and none making the Final 4. That'd be my out on a limb guess at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that happening. But to me, based on what I'm seeing, the Big Ten is arguably one of the best, if not the best conference in all of women's basketball.
It's balanced.
Oh, yeah.
All right? It's balanced. And I understand they're again, the perception around Indiana is they're perceived to be one of the 4 best teams in the country. Do you think they're one of the 4 best teams in the country right now, Drill MVP?
Well, right now versus all year are 2 different things.
Well, sure.
You got to understand that.
I'm not talking about their resume. I'm talking about right now. If you're projecting forward, do you have them in your Final 4?
No, I don't. Based on this bracket I'm looking at, no, I don't have them in the Final 4. But it really just depends about the matchups.
Yeah, and again, I want the Big Ten to have success. Don't get me wrong. I want Iowa to get to a Final 4. But I do wonder, I think the men's and the women's conferences have maybe the same issue where they're balanced throughout, but maybe not real strong or as strong as maybe we think they are at the top.
Right. And I mean, that's kind of what's placated the men throughout the years, as well as that exact issue you're describing. But Corey, let me ask you about South Carolina. Have you seen them play at all this year?
A little bit. I don't watch a lot of women's basketball outside of Iowa, but when I have watched South Carolina, When I don't watch Iowa, and if I'm watching women's basketball, and it's not Big Ten basketball, it's usually South Carolina if they're playing, because I am impressed.
Is it fair to say that it's South Carolina, and then there is a cataclysmic separation between everybody else?
Absolutely.
And if you had to pick right now, South Carolina or the field, who would you take?
Carolina.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, it's hard to see them losing this tournament. It really is. They're just so good and so deep.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, again, if you're going to beat South Carolina, you've got to match them physically.
Right.
And that's what I felt like Purdue did today against Iowa. There are plenty of that's the thing about Iowa. That's why if I'm an Iowa fan and I'm an Iowa women's basketball fan, I'm really nervous heading into the tournament. I'm not saying they can't make an Elite Eight or even a Final Four. I think they can, because they can score the lights out. But what I get nervous about with this team is their maybe lack of physicality, and teams tend to match their physicality more often than not. Maybe that's being a bit unfair, but they're just not the most physically dominating or assertive team. They don't. I mean, athletically, they certainly don't blow the doors off the gym. They've got really skilled players. They've got players that can shoot, players that can be crafty around the hoop. I mean, we talked about Hannah Stolke is probably their best athlete, but she's a freshman. So I do worry if Iowa gets matched up against a team that can match them physically, and all of a sudden they start making some threes. Again, Iowa survived today, but this game was very much in the balance in that second.
Well, what you described was a lot of the reasons they lost to Creighton last year in the round of 32.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
that's the fear.
Do you think if they face a team like that and they get mentally beat in maybe the first quarter, they're down 5 at the end of the first quarter, do you think there's a chance they could subconsciously remember that game and say, hey, it happened to us last year, not again, type thing?
Yeah. I mean, I could see that. Again, I don't know if it's apples to oranges. I'd have to watch back that Creighton game again, but I don't know if it's apples to oranges. But no, I think there are some similarities with how Purdue played in the second quarter. And I saw CJ brought up how they were defending Iowa, and you go back to the Maryland loss. You could probably argue that the Maryland loss is probably the ultimate blueprint, right? I mean, that team beat Iowa by 25, 28 points. So there is a formula to beating Iowa. Go back and watch how Kansas State beat Iowa back in December. Go watch how I was at that game down in Des Moines back in December. When teams can match you physically, and Drake scored at will against Iowa. And, again, the defense is an issue. I still think, though, both of these teams, and I'm talking about the men and the women, are likely to lose when they have off shooting nights, not because they necessarily, not that they're going to shoot 25% from the field, but they don't have a good enough defense to make up for having off shooting nights. And so if that hopefully that makes sense.
It did to me. Corey, just to correct the record, they beat Drake 92-86.
Oh, I know. I was at that game, but I'm saying it went to overtime. It was an overtime game.
Oh, I thought you said they lost. Never mind.
No, I'm just saying, go back and watch how Drake played at Iowa. They matched them inside. Again, Iowa's defense was not good in that game, and Monica Sonano went off in that game. And that's one thing that was different about today. Purdue really slowed her down and just cut down on her touches. She just didn't get the ball very much. So, anyways, yeah, we'll see what happens. Tournament play is totally different animal. Both these teams figured that out last year, and one down, hopefully a lot more to come. And again, survive and advance. That's the name of the game at this point.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I guess I'll talk to you tomorrow, Corey. I will say this is probably the most talent that's been in women's college basketball in a while. I mean, there's 7, 8, 9 seeds I could see making an Elite Eight run this year. It's really deep and more talented. So I'm happy for the women's basketball, and that's good for building up what the men are to be that talented and get all the crazy upsets.
Yeah, it's been a fun year for women's basketball. Again, I don't watch a ton of women's basketball outside of Iowa, but it has been a fun year. There have been, I think, after you get past South Carolina, you would probably agree with this drill MVP. There's been more balance. where
more parity. That's exactly what I was talking about.
Typically, you have 4 to 5 teams who are really good, and then everybody else. I think you have one team who's really good, and then everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Utah lost to Washington State yesterday. Washington State's probably not even going to make the tournament, but they beat arguably a 1 seed yesterday. Yeah. So it's just great to see for women's basketball, and I hope there's some crazy upsets because women's basketball needs that.
Absolutely.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Drill MVP. CJ says, just got my Iowa Smokehouse order today. Good for you, CJ. Appreciate you supporting our sponsor here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Yes, if you missed it, Iowa Smokehouse is sponsoring our Iowa postgame coverage throughout the month of March. Check out iowasmokehouse.com. And of course, as you support our sponsors, you're supporting us here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Visit iowasmokehouse.com and use the code Hawkeye for 15% off your order. They've got meat sticks, jerky, steak bites, barbecue sauces, salsas. I've got some bacon ketchup that I've yet to try that's waiting for me in the kitchen right now. Great stuff, and their bacon products are awesome. Tasting is believing with Iowa Smokehouse and from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Again, iowasmokehouse.com. All right, let's get to our next caller here. Iowa defeating Purdue 69-58 as we continue to recap the women's victory on this Friday evening. I don't know what day of the week it is. Let's go to Kyle, who's been on hold. Kyle, welcome to the show, sir.
How you doing tonight, Corey?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
I'm not bad. I was a little bit late to start the game, but it was definitely a weird one. I watched about the second quarter on, and it was strange.
Yeah, if you didn't watch the first quarter, you're watching the second quarter, you'd think, what in the world is happening? I don't know that I've seen a second quarter like that from this team. I have the numbers in front of me. For the second quarter, Iowa scored 10 points. Looking for an official box score here. I don't know. I'm sure it's out here somewhere. It was not available when I went live. Let me see if I can grab it. I'm curious to what they shot in that quarter from the field. I do have the official bucket. Let me just see here.
Yeah, I know there was only 25 total points scored by both teams, which is, I mean, Iowa's good quarters, 25 points by themselves.
Yeah, part of that is, again, how Purdue slowed things down, and part of that is Iowa just shot the ball poorly, and when you don't get the ball down to Monica Sonano, you don't have easy buckets. You're very reliant on Gabby Marshall, Martin, and those girls making threes. And I think it's a fair point from James earlier. Molly Davis is not giving you a lot offensively, and so you obviously you've got plenty. This team's got plenty of weapons, but if for some reason they're not able to get the ball into Sonano, that puts a lot of pressure on Clark, and Warnock. But I mean, Gabby Marshall's not going to break you down off the dribble. Kate Martin, that's not really her game either, although she can do that at times. That's probably the formula against Iowa.
I thought it was really interesting too. Like, I don't know if you listened to Caitlin right after the game when she went to the Big Ten desk.
I didn't.
She talked about basically that she talked about the tempo of the game, the physicality of the game. The other thing that she mentioned I thought was interesting was that Purdue played a little bit of the box and one that got them destroyed against Maryland. And I was thinking about that in combination with the tempo. And if I was a lower seed and I had to play Iowa in the NCAA tournament, I would have been listening to every word of that, because I think the box and one makes so much sense, because you've got one player that's just kind of following Caitlin around all the time, and you've got two players on the block and two players at the elbow surrounding Cesano. And after that, if I was playing against Iowa, like McKenna Warnock's a good player, Gabby Marshall has her moments, Kate Martin's a good player, but I'm not terrified of any of them outside of those. So it makes so much sense. And especially too, if you're someone that, like a team that's maybe, I mean, if I was a 2 seed, maybe they get a 7 seed in the second round or whatever. Like even just going into a game knowing like, hey, we might be 10 points worse per 100 possessions, but and that's probably what Purdue is, maybe 10, 15 points worse per 100 possessions. And they cut the possessions in half today. At times it felt like, because of offensive rebounding and slowing the tempo down. And if you're a big underdog and you can do that, you can cut the possessions way down. It takes a lot less mistakes from the favorite for you to be in the game late.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, we talk about that second quarter. I did find the official box score. Kyle, do you want to guess what Iowa shot? How many field goals do you think Iowa made in that second quarter?
Based on 10 points, probably only 2 or 3. 2?
2 field goals. They made 2 threes and 0 twos in the second quarter.
0 twos. Wow.
0
I
twos.
would love to know out of this entire season in women's college basketball, if there were any ranked teams that had a quarter that they failed to get a 2-point basket.
They were 2 of 10 from so 2 of 5 from 3, 0 of 5 from 2, and 4 of 4 from the free throw line. That is an incredible. Now again, we're breaking this down into quarters, not halves, but that's an incredible 10-minute stretch. And for them to have they still had the lead at halftime, correct?
Yes, they did. Yeah, by 4, I think. Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. So, again, Purdue's not the I don't even know where Purdue ranks offensively in this conference. I doubt they're top half of the conference. So it will be interesting if a team, like you said, can pull off that box and one, denying Monica Sonano the ball and putting pressure on Clark. If they can pull that off against Iowa and make threes more consistently, Purdue for the game from 3 shot. What did I say? They were 8 of 28, 29% from the field. They lost by 11. But I mean, a lot of those misses were open. They don't have great shooters on that team. I don't know where they rank in the conference, but that does worry me a bit if a team can do what Maryland did just a couple weeks ago. That's the blueprint.
Yeah, and also, did you say that? So, what was their total field goal attempts for the second quarter?
Iowa or Purdue?
Iowa.
Iowa was from the field 2 of 10.
So they got off 1 shot a minute, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
That's bad for a 30-second shot clock. Like that is a turtle's pace for a basketball game.
Yeah, 1 shot a minute. Obviously, they had 4 free throws, so they had field goal attempts in there that weren't counted. But I get what you're saying. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Slow the game down. And now maybe we're making way too much, Kyle. Like I could see them coming out tomorrow, and I'm curious to know what the score of the other game is. I'm gonna look that up real quick, but I would not be surprised to see Iowa go out against Illinois tomorrow and win by 20. But if they play Maryland tomorrow, which is a possibility, right now Maryland leads Illinois 11-7. I don't love Iowa's chances against that team. So
no, I don't either. Indiana. Like I respect Indiana, but like, I mean, I know they beat Iowa in the game at Assembly Hall, but like that Maryland was the one that terrified me based on the way that they played.
Exactly. Yep.
And I don't know. There is a lot of times that I watch them and I think, man, Caitlin Clark, maybe the greatest women's basketball player of all time. I know people can debate that. Monica is an all-conference player. I really like Warnock. I love Kate Martin. Hannah Stolke's been great. I just feel like with playing, I mean, they play Gabby Marshall like almost 30 minutes a game, and then they play Molly Davis 20 minutes a game. I just feel like I watch the games a lot, and I feel like, man, they're just one player away. They're that one like really good backcourt player away that comes off the bench, or just one more really good ball handler away from being like a South Carolina. I mean, maybe not as good as a South Carolina, but a top tier team.
Isn't that Molly Davis though? Like, isn't that who we kind of thought we were getting with Molly Davis during the offseason?
Yeah. I mean, and now that you bring up, talking about her aggressiveness, she was very passive tonight, I thought.
Yeah, she's just I don't know that it's her. I just don't see her attacking like I saw her attacking at Central Michigan. And we need to bring this up. Different level of basketball, and Central Michigan was terrible last year. Yeah. But I mean, you go back and watch her tape, and she played against Iowa a couple years ago in the tournament. She was really good in the mid-range. She attacks the rim, and for her size, she can score. And so I agree with you. Passive is a good word to describe her, and I do think, I don't know that it's as consistent, that the data would tell you that it's as consistent with the women, but I do think guard play wins in March. And, it will. I do think, I remember Kate Martin last year having the same conversation about Kate Martin in the tournament. She had a big game or two in the tournament, didn't play great against Creighton. Guard play is going to be huge. And talk about inconsistency. Gabby Marshall's been, I love Gabby Marshall for who she is, and she's a great leader, and she's coming back for another season. She has been one of the most up and down players in recent memory for a Lisa Bluter coach team. I mean, just recently she's been making threes, but she went through a stretch there in the regular season where she couldn't make any threes. But she's not giving you threes. What's she giving you?
I've said that the entire season. I'm like, I was looking at their team, like their team totals and averages and stuff before this, and I'm sitting there thinking, man, Gabby Marshall, it says she shot 32% for the entire year from three and 35% from the field, and I'm sitting there looking at that thinking, man, if that's all she's shooting, what
I
good
know.
is she playing almost 30 minutes a game? Like she's playing 3/4 of the entire game, and that's
she's
supposed
not.
to be the thing.
Here's the deal: she's not a good defender.
She's horrible on defense.
Well, I know,
Like,
but
I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
there are people.
Horrible.
So this is but see, Freedom Liberty. See, I disagree with Freedom Liberty. See, Freedom Liberty says Marshall is the best individual defender, which is why she is there. If she's the best Iowa's got, then Iowa's got some problems. I just don't think she's a good. She is not a good on-ball defender.
Yeah, she
comes up with
I don't know where that comment.
Well, here's what she does. She does. I'm sure she leads the team in steals. Would be my guess.
Yeah.
And my guess is that she leads the team in steals, and I think that's a very misleading stat. And Freedom Liberty, another positive comment. This is true. The team is poor on defense. That's absolutely true. I think Kate Martin at her best can be their best defender. But you're right. Overall, I've seen Gabby get blown by so many times. Very reminiscent to what Iowa got with Jordan Bohannon. The difference with Jordan is Jordan at least was consistently good from three. Gabby Marshall has not been. Now, recently, she's come alive, and hopefully that sticks here in March. But I agree. I know that she's a polarizing player for that reason, and a lot of people feel she's great on defense, but I don't remember a player in my recent memory that I disagreed with. Like, I don't – the people that say she's great on defense, I see the exact opposite, and it's nothing against her personally, but I don't remember a player that polarizing on that end. But
well, I think it's interesting, like, because one conversation, because I follow a lot of NBA basketball, and that like talks about all-time greats and stuff. One thing that they always brought up with Larry Bird was Larry Bird. If they would have had defensive win shares back then, Larry Bird would have been very, very below average in defensive win shares, but he led the NBA in steals 4 times. So that was kind of his way of contributing, even though, I mean, if they ISO'd Larry Bird against, a Michael Jordan, or, I mean, anybody against Michael Jordan, but if they ISO'd a above average guard against Larry Bird, like one on one, he was getting cooked, and that's how I feel about Gabby. Like she's probably a smart basketball player that knows where to be at the right times and maybe gets in passing lanes more than other players, but like her size is an issue along with Molly Davis, and I don't see the isolation defense at all.
Well, they don't. Lisa Bluter doesn't have. I mean, she's obviously got lots of confidence in her older players, and you're not. It's obvious they're not turning to Taylor McCabe. They're not. They don't have Kylie Feuerbach. I mean, you wonder maybe things would be different if maybe Kylie would have taken that step had she not tore her knee in the offseason. But those are all question marks. So yeah, we'll see. Guard play is going to be crucial, and if they can't get the ball into Sonano. I mean, I know this is simplifying the game, but if they can't get the ball into Sonano, the guards have to shoot well.
Yeah.
And that's all it comes down to. Inconsistency, it takes one off night by Caitlin Clark and a defense that's just denying Monica Sonano the ball to have an offensive performance that is almost sure to get you beat. And I think more often than not, Kyle, 69 points, and Iowa scoring 69 points, usually that's going to be a losing number for Iowa.
Yeah.
Usually they're not holding their – I don't know what they average defensively, but in the Big Ten. But in tournament play, when you're playing against some of the best offensive teams in the country, 69 points ain't gonna get it done.
That was exactly what happened last year, wasn't it, with Creighton? I think they only scored 60 or 62 in that game.
Yeah, the low scoring game. Yeah.
You would say Maryland is the best women's basketball team in the Big Ten right now, correct?
Boy, I think so. I just don't think it's Indiana, but
yeah.
We'll see. I mean, one of these two teams is going to the well. We don't know that. Illinois right now is competing. It's 18-18 into the 20-18. Excuse me, 20-18 into the first quarter. Maryland leading. So we'll see what happens there. I think if you're an Iowa fan, you're rooting hard for Illinois. But didn't Illinois beat Iowa earlier this year?
They did by 4 on the road. I think Illinois beat them in Illinois.
We care about the NCAA tournament. These are some matchup wise. These are probably some good matchups for Iowa to be tested here before we hit the NCAAs, especially if they play Maryland, but even if they play Illinois.
Absolutely. And just for perspective, I know you were talking about South Carolina there a second ago. Maryland, who I think we would both agree is the best team in the conference. Maryland lost to South Carolina 81-56 in the preseason, in the pre-conference play. They lost by 25 points. So
That's the
there's
challenge.
a little bit of a golfing class there, I think.
Absolutely. Appreciate you calling the Iowa Smokehouse line, Kyle. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night, Corey.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
I'm going to come, baby.
All right, let's go to our next caller on our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling. Who's on the line?
Zach, how's it going, Corey?
Hey, Zach. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you, sir?
Good Hawkeye win. Ugly, but a win.
Yeah, not always pretty. Like I said, the second quarter, I mean, you go past the second quarter. I think for the game, Iowa, if you take the second quarter out, I have to do the math. But, I mean, Iowa shot 44% in the first, 46% in the third, and how about this, 69% from the field in the fourth. So just a down quarter. And, that does – I know we have short turnarounds, but, I would hope the coaches look at that second quarter and say, okay, how do we combat this? And so they're paid to do, and they're going to have a short turnaround tomorrow.
Yep, and you just maybe hope for like a 3 or 4 overtime game with the game going on right now.
Right now, you never know. It's close.
Yeah, and I mean, Michigan State gave Indiana a battle for basically 3.5 quarters.
Yeah.
So I know Molly was in foul trouble for the first half, so she didn't really get many minutes. And at least is sort of like Fran in a way where if she sees the game going out of hand, she immediately pulls the bench and goes back to her starters.
Yeah. Well, especially when you're that veteran laden. I mean, she just has immense trust. They're so old. This team is so experienced and old, minus Hannah Stolke, that you can kind of understand that. And I think the future is bright. I mean, I like what Hannah Stolke is going to give you down the post. I don't know if she's a natural 5. That was brought up earlier. But I do like Taylor McCabe, what she's going to give you from behind the arc. But you're right. I mean, I think the default is going to be the seniors.
Yeah, and I think if Taylor could get a little more playing time, get another shooter out there for Caitlin, maybe take a little more pressure off of her. It's going to stink partially for next year with Ava Jones not being able to play because she's 6'3", I think. Yeah,
but they'll get Ava Hayden next year, correct? Am I right in saying that she's
24?
But she's 24. Okay.
Because I think next year they would have gotten Ava Jones and was it
Kenise Johnson 18. You're right. Ava Hayden's 24. So yeah. Fair point.
And I watch women's game all the time as well as the men. And I think Addie just doesn't play much because not many Big Ten teams run a big anymore.
Well, Monica Sonano's a big.
I mean, as far as, Michigan State does have a big or two, but most teams usually have like 6'2", maybe, which maybe should give Addie a advantage. But like you said, I don't know if she's developed the way that potentially Lisa thought by now.
Exactly. I think that's what it is. I just don't think she's far enough along. Maybe the light will switch on for her during the off season. They have Jada Giamfi, who's going to give you some, hopefully, minutes, in the front court. But yeah, they need Addie O'Grady to develop. They need Stolke to develop, and they need Jada Giamfi to develop. They may do some work in the transfer portal. They added Molly Davis this past offseason. I would not be surprised, especially with the Ava Jones situation. That's a fair point. Would not be surprised to see them go to the portal for the front court, maybe at the 5.
Right, and because Sharon Goodman's still coming off her ACL injury, and I think Lisa's been taking it easy on her to not injure her again. But I know one of the first mad Caitlin is a bad Caitlin.
Yeah, I agree.
When and I get there were times I think she got slapped in the face and pushed in the back, and it does get to her. But you saw good Caitlin in the fourth quarter.
You're not going to get every call, and more often than not, she gets those calls. And you're going to have to live with that, especially in the tournament. You're going to have crews that aren't familiar with how you play, and you're not always going to get those. And they're going to probably get the first 2 games at home. But, if you want to advance to the third weekend, you're going to have to probably deal with some officials that aren't pro you. and a crowd that's not pro U, and that's a fair point.
Yep, and in the middle of the Big Ten season, it seemed like Clark kind of settled it down as far as the anger. Tonight, it was a little bit more noticeable.
Yeah.
It's like I said, I'm happy for a win. Hopefully tomorrow they can come out a little better. They came out great offensively. They just had a bad quarter, and maybe it's this as well. I know the men had issue. I think they might have said there's an issue last year. It seemed like they were playing with a different style of basketball too. I think it was a little lighter, maybe the Wilson ball.
I could be totally wrong on this. My guess is that environment arena is bigger than basketball. That'd be my guess. Like, you're playing in the Target Center, you tend to have, when you're playing those bigger venues, at least from what I see teams struggling, teams who are more shooting-esque, more three-point shooting teams. I see those teams struggling in bigger arenas. Now, that's certainly not a rule. I think every NBA team's playing in a big arena, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of it. Go to the Target Center; it's a massive arena, and those girls aren't used to playing in these massive arenas. So that'd be my guess. I don't know about the basketball, but I hear that a lot. I think maybe the actual arena, the actual venue, has more of an impact, but who knows?
Kind of like what I think kind of sight lines. That you're used to something different behind that basket rather than just almost emptiness.
Right.
But like I said, hopefully they can keep it rolling tomorrow. I think they basically locked up a 2 seed in the tournament, which will be nice to see them home for 2 games. And hopefully they can just keep it going. And good luck to them tomorrow, and hopefully Sunday, and the men on Sunday as well. Because if they win that? If the men win the game on Sunday, are they the automatic 2 seed then?
I guess it's not. There is a scenario in which depends on got like 8 teams potentially tied for that second seed, but there is a scenario in which Iowa doesn't get the second seed, but they're more than likely, almost certainly, going to be the second seed if they win. So I'm not going to go through all the scenarios because I don't really care enough.
Right.
They're most likely the 2 seed if they win.
Right. It's the easy thing to just win and let everything else go.
Exactly. Control what you can control.
Yep. I'll have a great evening, Corey. Go Hawks.
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate the call, sir. And we've had plenty of calls this evening, and we appreciate that here on Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Kelly says, can we talk about how the Target Center turned into Carver North? And it will continue to be a heavy Iowa crowd. Advantage Iowa, advantage Minnesota, advantage Wisconsin. It's not a centralized location for the tournament, and I know that's brought some criticism in. Obviously, I like it. Selfishly, she's an Iowa guy. Freedom, liberty. We don't have a scholarship unless someone leaves. Ava says she wants to play. She doesn't want to take a medical hardship. The transfer portal, I know that it's hard to imagine who is going to leave, but even in the women's game, the transfer portal is active, more active than it's ever been. I would be surprised if Iowa does nothing in the portal, because my guess is somebody will leave. I could be wrong on that, but that would be my guess. Bob says, is it true that if the men beat Nebraska, they'll be the 2 seed? I think or 3 seed. They'll be the 2 seed most likely, Bob. There is a scenario again in which they don't get the 2, but I believe they win on Sunday, they're guaranteed a double bye. I believe that's the case. Again, I'm not into all these different tiebreakers, and heck, we'll know in a couple days. Anyways, all right, folks, just to briefly recap, the Iowa women defeating Purdue 69-58 on the road, or I should say up at the Target Center in Minneapolis. Slow second quarter. The Hawkeyes making just 2 field goals. They were both threes in that second quarter, held to 20% from the field. But for the game, Iowa shot 46%, 32% from 3, which ultimately got it done. And again, Iowa will play the winner of Illinois and Maryland. Those 2 teams battling right now. The Terrapins on top 33-20 with 5:02 left in the second quarter. That game being televised on the Big Ten Network. Thank you again to Iowa Smokehouse. Use that code Hawkeye for 15% off and receive free shipping when you purchase $50 or more via their website. Continue to keep it right here, folks, locked in for Iowa postgame coverage throughout the month of March, right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We will talk to you tomorrow following the Iowa women's semifinal game against either Illinois or Maryland. We'll talk to you tomorrow.